Hi, this is Lorraine. If you give me a second to clear, center, and balance my energy, we'll get started. Okay, so I will just start. So as soon as I finished the last video, a whole bunch of more information started coming in again, and so I just wrote it down. But also, I just, when I edit the video, I can there are errors. I notice errors, and my grandmother was my paternal grandmother, not my maternal. So that's my father's mother. That was I was talking about in the last video, and it's Saint Christopher. That was a Saint Christopher medal. I'm not a Saint Anthony, and I don't know. When I lived in Hawaii, I went to Saint Anthony Church, and for some reason, something at that time made me associate Saint Anthony with children, and I can't tell you why it's been so long, but I was praying to Saint Anthony for children at that time, and so there was a connection I was making when I did the last video. But it's actually Saint Christopher who's the patron saint of children in Catholicism. So I'm just going to go right into what came in right after I finished the last video, because it is so if anybody who's watched a lot of my videos, each video builds on itself. Each video does not stand alone. So if you watch them, sometimes you won't know what I'm talking about, because some of the information is based on previous videos that I've done in the past. And I try to explain as much as I can when I'm doing the video, but I can't review everything. So I just keep that flow going of information as I'm guided. And so the information that came in right after I finished the last video was directly connected to that video I had just finished. And when I was doing that video, I talked about my friend who had been in the secret space program, and then had numerous he had been sent back through time, forward in time, numerous times. And I had shown this image drawing that I had done. That was a vision I had that showed me that he was living on multiple timelines, and not just a handful of timelines, not just, I mean, we're talking infinite number of timelines. I couldn't even count the number of timelines he was on, based on the visual that was presented to me. And so what came in next, what came in right after I finished that video was an explanation or an understanding of why to move people through time was a violation of universal law, divine law, but also why this person is so amazing. He's an enigma. He is exceptional. And there are very few people whose DNA and consciousness can tolerate this type of event or events. But they are put, or we are put on this earth for a reason. We are placed in this universe. We are created as participants in this iteration of the divine for a purpose. Okay, everybody has a path and purpose, and so one of his paths and purpose was, even though we have free will, and even though everybody has a choice they can do good or they can do harm, right? There is a framework that we're working from. And so this person was put on this world with these abilities, with these exceptions, given, should he be required to go through certain things? Should this negative polarity continue to choose darkness and put him through these experiences, okay? And so this dark energy chose to do this, and therefore he was ready and prepared and had everything he needed to be able to move through it successfully. Not without scars, not without damage, but when I explain to you what I'm going to explain to you, you'll understand why he is such an exception. So when we pass back to the light and reconcile with divinity, there is a release that happens. This reconciliation allows for a release, then assimilation of information, also known as lifetimes. This is necessary in order to bring a healthy mind, body, and spirit into the now, into this moment. When individuals are brought into the secret space program and are moved forward and back through time without reconciling with divinity, the source of creation, there is no release and amalgamation of information. This creates extensive discord in the body and mind. It is the higher self, the divine, working diligently through the spirit to maintain the well-being of the individual, the physical self. These acts are violations of divine law by all groups engaging in this activity. Even one transport of one soul through time violates divine law. Any rationalization or belief that these acts were okay or authorized was a lie. The root of the belief by this cabal energy that they ruled or owned the earth was misguided. Thus, any established authorities such as government, justice, economic are not legitimate or binding. These structures are presently being removed along with any subsequent infrastructures put in place by this illegitimate pseudo-authoritative body, such as social, educational, correctional, law enforcement, military, religion, etc. What have you put your faith in? The meek are inheriting the earth. So, when we pass back to the light, we reconcile with the divine, and all of our lifetimes, all the information carried within our DNA and our consciousness is reconciled and ordered in a way that we can utilize, receive in our next lifetimes when we incarnate into the next life. And so I did that. I was talking about the void and the men that create that spider web and the sperm going to the egg. And once that sperm breaks the egg or breaks into the egg and fertilizes it, that creation starts. And the void is where creation begins, the formation, the idea of creation, what will be created. But once that sperm breaks the egg, breaks the wall of the egg and enters the egg, that is where that life, that idea is created, okay? And so all that information from my lifetimes has to be reconciled. For example, my lifetimes has to be reconciled upon my death with the divine source, reordered in a way that when I am reborn into a new body, that information is ordered in a way and put into my DNA in a way that I can utilize for me to help me evolve, grow, change, transcend through this universe, and also the divine source energy. Because that divine source energy, that creator of all things, is working through us as it discovers itself through our experiences. We are directly connected to the divine source, and we carry that divine energy within us. So every single time that they put somebody through time and they lived 20 years, and then they brought them back and they compartmentalized those memories in their brain, those experiences were never reconciled with the divine source energy. They were not ordered in a way that could be utilized in a healthy way to help us grow and transcend, right? They weren't merged with our DNA and our consciousness in a way that we can use for the benefit of the self and for all. That is a direct violation of universal law. There's no way around it. Any person, any being, any world that gave you any type of indication that it was acceptable and it was okay was lying, and they violated universal law. And that world will deal with the consequences of their actions, just as every other person who engaged in this activity believing that it was okay will have karmic consequences. And that is why each of us need to connect to the higher self, the divine, and ask for divine guidance, because then you know that is not okay. You can feel it in your body. I can feel it in my body, what is okay and what's not okay, and I won't do it. If it doesn't feel right, I'm not going to do it. I don't care what kind of criticism I get. I don't care what kind of condemnation. I don't care about other people's opinions. I'm not doing it. That's it. Just because somebody else did it doesn't make it okay. Just because somebody else got away with it doesn't make it okay. Just because you got away with it doesn't make it okay. Okay? And that's why I also say there is no hell. There is no devil. There is a negative energy that has been associated with this idea of the devil and Lucifer, but there is no brimstone and fire. The hell that we live in is the hell that we create for ourselves when we reconcile with the divine and we know what negativity we've brought to the world, how we've harmed individuals, how we've harmed groups of people, how we've harmed races or religions or animals or the earth. That is the hell that we live in when we know the truth of how our actions affected the world around us, the people around us, the energy around us. That's what hell is. And we all are accountable. When we reconcile with the divine, we can see this with absolute clarity, and we choose our next lifetime based on our experiences, based on the choices we've made in the past and what we hope to learn in the future. And we make those choices in this moment. We make those choices every moment, with every decision, with every thought, with every experience. So, this energy, this negative energy, this cabal energy, the fact that they believed that they owned Earth and owned us was not true. Whoever told them or led them to believe that they are in some way superior and that this was their world and this was their property, we were their property, it was a lie. They acted as if they owned us. They treated us as if they owned us. Every structure that we have in place was built on a lie. It is illegitimate, and it is being taken down right now. It is being dismantled. Everything will be razed. Okay? That is from, just like I just said, as far as government, justice, economic, all those major structures within our society, and then the smaller infrastructure of our correctional facilities, how law enforcement's been established and empowered, how our justice system, our legal system's been structured, social, educational, religion, our military, how they've been utilized and how they've been empowered. It's all coming down. And that's why I say, when I met maybe a year ago, I don't even know how long it's been, when I talk about the men in the special forces and how they've been trained to work outside the chain of command, we're going to have to be working outside of any known chain of command, any known authoritative organization from the past, because it's all being brought down. It's all being brought down, and we have to move from a different place. And these men, you know, I don't know if, I've always known intuitively, but these men are highly coordinated, highly intelligent, and good people. And a lot of them come from backgrounds with some type of, not all, but some type of very strong faith. And I'll just say, in generally speaking, the South is a place regionally in the United States where people are known to be very faithful in their and have a very strong spiritual foundation, and that's across the board. Okay, and so they have this. So when you have a genius that is highly capable on many levels, they can restructure and work a problem and come up with a solution very quickly, and that's what they're trained to do. And they are going to be able to think outside the box, because that's what they have to do, and that's what they've been trained to do through their service in the military, right? And so that makes them very indispensable and huge assets during this transition. And and that's what made them very huge threats as they left the military, you know, and that's why there's a lot of brokenness. There's a lot of intentional traumatizing of these individuals. But there are people who are brought onto this world knowing that they are going to have to deal with a lot of trauma. And we are unique in a way that I can't explain, and we find some way to move ourselves back to center, release the trauma, and keep driving forward. And I think many of these men embody those qualities. There are many light workers that didn't make it through, that are very powerful energies. And I said, in my last video, I said Chris Cornell was one of the people who came in really strong, and I got a ton of information about him in like 2015 and 16, and I didn't understand why I was getting all this information, but he was a very powerful spiritual being on this planet, and this negative energy knew it, and these attacks come in and they can move you way out of center. And if you don't find the tools or regain the tools, some of us were taken out. But that doesn't mean make them bad or weak or anything like that. It just means that this negative energy, when push came to shove at that place around 2016, 17, when I had my spiritual awakening, that's when that negative energy was coming super hard at people. We had a lot of suicides in 2017 and deaths. of powerful energies in the universe and on this world. And that was to try to stop the transition. Okay, stop the light workers, disempower them, dishearten them. Okay. But they can't stop all of us. There's just no way. They tried, but that wasn't gonna happen. So I think that was the most intense message that came through. I always knew that everything was going to kind of be taken down, but that was the first time I could feel it. I could see it. You know, it was apparent in the society around me, and when I walked through Seattle, clearly. I would just say to people, look around you. Everything's being dismantled, right? Everything's coming down. They've literally destroyed what we had. But this negative energy was trying to rebuild it the way they want it. So they took it, they figured, we'll take it down the way we want and we'll rebuild it the way they want, right? That's what was happening. And it was clear. But this is the first time I got the message intuitively that everything's being taken down, you violated divine law, there will be consequences. And actually, while I was getting the messages that were coming in, there was extraneous information that came in that was kind of on the outside. So that main message that came in was about that this negative energy did not own or rule over Earth. They never did, even though they acted that way. But then also that negative energy, that negative cabal energy, that created this breakaway civilization, the Zeta Reticuli, or they call them the Greys, that left. Okay, that's very, okay, sorry, something just came in. They left, and now they are trying to usurp the divine. They're trying to convert all these worlds into their perception of reality. They will be they will have consequences for their actions, and Zako will be going to their world. He will be finishing what's needs to be done here, and that is one of his paths to move to that world next, and to neutralize it, and to stop it from infesting its dogma, its beliefs on other worlds. The other point I would like to make is, so this Zeta, this also came in when I had this information come in. This was part of the extraneous information on the kind of the outskirts. That's kind of, so it's hard for me to explain how the information comes in. It just comes in all at once, but there's kind of really strong messages that come in, and then there's all these little things that come in, but it's not like a linear way. And somebody talked to me, I don't know, I was very young. I was like 10, 11, 12 years old. My friend's mom was Japanese, and her dad was a World War II vet. So he met her in Japan, and she was, I guess, a war bride, right? And I think I had met her, and she did some things very differently, how she counted and stuff. And I was like, I don't understand how she can just look at that and know how many pieces of paper are there, right? And what was explained to me was that somebody said to me, Western civilization, we look at things very linear, like an outline. Like when we're writing papers and we do outline, we have 1, 2, 3, and then we have A, B, C, and then we have Roman numeral, 1, 2, 3. We're very linear, but Eastern culture, they explained it to me like it's like a sphere. They see things as a sphere. So think of their mind as a sphere, and then all information comes in it like pins in a, and the way the visual I had, or what he drew, was a circle with like a bunch of pins. It was almost like a pin cushion. It was like a spherical pin cushion with a bunch of pins inside of it. And I'll see if I can find a graphic or something to visualize it, to give you a visual. But he goes, they just perceive things differently, so how they process the information is different, right? And so I guess that's the best way I can put it, is when the information comes in, it just drops in, and there's the main message, but then there's like all this extraneous information that's sitting out there, like filling in the gaps, I guess you could say. But it's not coming in a linear way. It's not coming in 1, 2, 3, right? Not in any type of order. It's just all kind of sits there, and I can kind of, I guess, maybe pick out what I want to grasp onto or focus on. And so anyway, this extraneous information that was sitting on the outside was told me that this zeta reticuli, this gray peak, the gray energy, and I've touched on this in a past video, there is a maniacal mental health issue with this collective, okay? So they released their bodies. They didn't pass back to the light, first of all. They moved their consciousness out of their physical being and housed it in some type of storage system, and destroyed their bodies. So now their consciousness is kind of free flowing within this storage system. So you have all these different consciousnesses of this society existing within this memory bank, this holding system for all these consciousnesses. Okay, so our consciousness is housed with divinity. Our consciousness is housed with the source. Okay, so I always talk about, when I talk to people about the higher self and connecting to the higher self is that part of us, that's our consciousness, that still resides with the divine source. And then part of our consciousness is here, housed within our physical body, within our cells, within our DNA, within our energy field, okay? And so we're always connected to that part of ourself that is with the divine, but we are separate here physically, okay? We see ourselves as separately here on this plane of existence. But we can connect to that higher self, to that divine part of ourselves for guidance, okay? And it's always there to help us on our path and purpose. That's why I say I always trust the divine. If it says, no, don't do that, I'm not doing it. If it says you need to do that, then I do that. And that is me connecting to that divine part of myself that is here to guide us, okay? Or guide me. And what this consciousness, this zeta reticuli consciousness has done or tried to do, is just completely trying to separate itself from its divine roots and create a separate reality, because it doesn't want to reconcile with the divine. It wants to be separate. It sees itself as this hierarchy like we have here. Like there are people way at the top making the decisions for all of us 8 billion people, like a handful of people, maybe even less, maybe like 5 people. Okay, maybe 3 people, maybe 1. And it likes that position of power and control, and it wants to stay there. And if it dies, it reconciles with divinity. All the information in its DNA and its consciousness will reconcile, and it will see things from a different perspective, and it'll be reborn from a different place, right? That's why there is this amnesia that we're born into this world. Every world, when we come into this material plane, onto this material plane, we come with this, we forget. And our path is to remember, okay? So how that manifests at this level, or the 3D level, 4D, all the way up, is going to be different, because we enter at a different level of consciousness. But from this level of separation, we are asked to remember and then reconnect with the divine and choose that source unity consciousness, okay? Well, these negative cabal energies, they want to stay on top. They don't want to be unified. They want to have the most. They want to be in control, okay? And so when they create this created this breakaway civilization. They released the body. They housed all their consciousness in a storage system. The people on top are still on top. The people on the bottom are still on the bottom. The people in the middle, at different levels, are always at that. It's very much like a caste system. It's a caste system. It's a very complex caste system, more complex than what we know here on Earth. But nevertheless, it still exists. Okay, and there's someone on top and someone on the bottom. Okay. And they never pass back to the light. They move through time. They're like time travelers, and people are so enamored with this because of this idea of technology and space travel being so desirable. I want to leave this world. It's so horrible here. I can be this elevated conscious being who can travel to different worlds. That's so desirable. For some people who are just so miserable here and they want to escape, never thinking about what they need to sacrifice to do that. I'm committed to this world. I'll go through whatever I need to go through to move this world into balance because it's beautiful and I love it. All the suffering that I've gone through, I have perspective for right now, and I'm committed and I'm dug in. I'm not going anywhere. But there are these people who will, connect with the fantasy of what this idea of intellect, higher level understanding, universal existence, as in meaning traveling through space and spaceships and meaning going to other worlds. They are enamored by this, and they will choose this type of life. They will choose this eternal existence because they don't pass, right? They're not dying. They just keep moving through time. They travel through space. They conquer worlds. They try to expand their kingdoms, very much like the King and Queen of England. They have their territories, or what do they call them? I can't remember off the top of my head. It'll come back to me though. But my point in bringing this up is, since these consciousnesses never pass back to the light, they travel through time, they live on many timelines, they've created many timelines and exist on many timelines, and their consciousness is holding all that information. And they're never reconciling back with divinity to reorder that information, assimilate that information, and no amalgamation happens, and therefore they are these conscious beings thinking that they have figured it out and that they are in control and that they can do whatever they want because they are now pure consciousness, and pure consciousness doesn't have the confines of a body, and that they can reach this divine divine level of consciousness. And what has happened is, because they have not reconciled with divinity, their mental state is very precarious. It's very unbalanced. And I'm not talking about unbalanced energy. I'm talking about psychosis. I'm talking about mental health issues. And anybody who, so I did a lot of volunteer work in the homeless community, and I've been a lot of places in my life, and I've dealt with a lot of different people. And if you have ever met someone who truly has like a mental health issue, they can seem very normal. They can seem very normal on many levels, but there can be triggers that will move them out of that space of having a normal mindset. And so I think sociopaths, like a lot of serial killers we've seen, like, oh, they seem so normal until something triggered them and tapped into that pathology, whatever it was, okay? And so this Zeta Reticuli gray civilization consciousness has moved from being here on earth and being normal human beings just like you and me, living life, but choosing the darkness, to feeling like they could usurp the divine and to have gone through this whole process of doing so, and is now at this place of being very maniacal and being detrimental to the greater good. Okay, to the greater good, not of just humanity, to the universe. Okay, and so it will be dealt with. But anybody engaging this energy in any way is at risk. Do not let any appearance of normalcy, of balance, convince you that they are normal or balanced or healthy minded. Also, people can become very enamored or very intimidated by weaponry that they might have because they're so advanced. Or maybe gifts they have with their consciousness, what they've been able to achieve through consciousness over the decades or centuries or whatever of after leaving this world and then returning back through time. Whatever sense of entitlement they may have to this world is an illusion. It is a misconception in their unhealthy minds. And so I guess this is a warning. This is information, and it's a warning. It's a warning for anybody on this earth that is engaging them. And it is a warning for this energy that it will not prevail on this world. It will not remain on this world. And it will not harm anything or anyone on this world. It will not be allowed. And any action moving forward, the consequences increase exponentially as you continue knowing this truth. So there's another thing I wanted to explain when I was talking about that void, and I was talking about I exist and I am. I feel like when I was editing, I was like, well, I kind of crossed over, and it wasn't clear. I felt like I used I exist and I am interchangeably, which they're not. So this divine source energy, this void, this place of existence, this void that I go to is a place of pure consciousness. There is no energy. There is no particles of energy. There's nothing. Okay? It's just a void. It's not darkness. I want to say it's darkness because it seems like it's black, but it's just pure nothingness. And it's this place of this force, this field, this divine energy, this consciousness. It just is. It just exists. And it's quiet. It's calm. I want to say it's flowing, but it's not really flowing. It's just I just feel in my body, I just feel I feel like I know. So I know that I exist. I know I exist. That's it. I just know I exist. There's no thought, there's no movement, There's no nothing. It's just a consciousness that knows it exists. It is. Okay? But the second that that consciousness starts to see itself as something, okay, it starts to want to be something other than pure existence, right? And it starts to, like a ball of clay, it starts to trying to start figuring itself out. Like, I exist. What does that mean? First, as soon as that question comes up, a question, any question comes up, then it starts to think, it starts to create, it starts to manifest something. And that's when the mirror, okay, so I was thinking about this. How do I differentiate between pure existence, like this divine energy knowing nothing else other than it exists? How do I differentiate between something knowing it exists and then all of a sudden creating? Okay, so the second that that creator tries to see itself, so it tries to put up a mirror and see what it is, what am I? What am I? That's when creation starts. Okay, does that make a little bit more sense? I just wanted to pull out like I exist versus I am, because I felt like I was using it interchangeably, and that's, I don't want to, it's really important that this be clear, okay? That when I know nothing more than I exist, that there is nothing in this universe, there is nothingness. When I go to the void and I'm just like existence, okay? Nothing else, no thought, no movement, no nothing. That is pure consciousness, just being. But the second that I try to see myself as something more, as just existence, and I try to figure out what I am, that's the moment of creation. That's when the sperm hits the egg and the light happens. And we start to manifest a reality, okay? Whatever that reality is, okay? And I was watching Ruben... he used to do a show on Gaia, interview with ED, extra dimensional, and he had somebody come on, this young girl, and she was like, oh yeah, once you elevate to this highest level of consciousness, you can go create your own universe. That's separation. That is so separation. That is the mind of someone living in the 3D, okay? We are always unified, never apart. I am everything, everywhere, and nowhere. I permeate all things, unified always, never apart. There is only one existence. And once that existence starts to see itself, it fractures itself into fractals and starts to create reality, but it's always unified. We don't ever separate from unity, because we aren't separate from unity. We are unity, okay? We are unity. We all, as one source of energy, are unity. We carry unity in this place of being separate. We carry unity within us, and we see ourselves as separate, but truly we're not. And as we move through transcendence, we'll understand what that means. In each level of transcendence, we start to unify more and more and more, until once again we are completely unified with this divine source energy as one unifying field, okay? But we all have access to the void. We all can go home, but we must be very disciplined in our spiritual commitment to the self, to the divine, and to the greater good before we can access that place from this plane of existence. When we pass back to the light, when we die, we always go back to that source energy. But from this place of ego, we have to release the ego, clear center and balance our energy, work towards maintaining that clear-centered, balanced energy, releasing the ego, centering ourselves, and then connecting and unifying with the source. So there are requirements, but we all have access to it. Okay, so I'm sorry, I don't want to keep talking about this because I can talk about it forever, and I don't want to go too far out on tangents. I want to try to make sure I keep reinforcing these ideas as a foundation, because once each of us have a foundation, each of us need a foundation to work from, and then we build on that based on our path and purpose. So like I said, my foundation that I was given in 2016 when I started this massive spiritual awakening, or even from the dogma of religion, from sitting with my grandmother on the couch up until present, like, it's changed, okay? And it is evolving, and it's become something new and different. But actually, as I become more centered and more connected to my divine roots, I become more powerful, right? And that is a gift that I'm given to create balance on this world, and fairness, okay? And unity here on this plane of existence. And so I guess I was hoping I wouldn't have to talk about this, but I will. And it's only because it's very painful. And so I talk about my friend over and over, and he is I don't know. It's hard for me to articulate what he was meant to bring into my life, but he has brought many memories, past life memories, into my life, because we have a profound past life connection. But I feel like from this place that I'm in now, I can look at any person and see a past life connection. And because they're all mirroring back a part of myself. But this person, the past life connections are very jarring. So one of my past lives, I talked about in the past, it was I did 4 past life regressions with someone, and the first past life regression was me. I was a little boy, and I could see my feet. I had no shoes on. My clothes were more like caveman clothes, I guess. It was like kind of over the shoulder, animal skin. It went, because I was a little boy, it was like down mid calf. It was brown. I was dirty, but we lived outside, and it was a different time. My mother was killed by a wild animal, and the shaman, who is a female, raised me. And she raised me to become the shaman of that tribe. And so I did. I became the shaman and the leader, though it wasn't a separate role. I was the spiritual and the leader of the tribe, the chief. And it was, I always feel Black Forest. It was somewhere in the Black Forest. It was about 5,000 years ago. And then, maybe more. No, about 5,000. And then, but at this point, some point I became old, and I felt it was time for us to leave. We needed to leave. We couldn't stay where we were. Something horrible was going to happen, and it was going to take out the whole tribe, so we had to leave. And so part of the tribe wanted to follow me because I've been the leader for so long, another part of the tribe wanted to go with this younger guy. He was like, oh, he's old, he doesn't know what he's talking about, we can stay, blah, 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 blah. And so I can look at these people and I can see the past life connections. I know who they are on either side, the people that followed me, the people that stayed. It's very overwhelming. But anyway, we went and we ended up going, and I looked at a map and it was hard for me to tell, but I know we were somewhere in Europe, and I know we moved towards like Turkey, towards the Middle East. And we had to get to higher ground. That's all I know. We had to get across, and we needed to get to higher ground or away from where we were. And maybe at some point we went up until we got out to Turkey. I'm not really sure, but we got there and we were safe. And the rest of the tribe, it was a flood or something that took them out. I think it was water. And when we got there, the angels came or whatever. They're like, hey, it's time to go. And I'm like, no, it's not time to go yet. I have to make sure they're settled. And once they're settled, then I can go. So I was given the privilege of a longer life to help make sure that my people were okay before I passed. And then I passed to the light. And then I had another past life regression I did, and I was in, it was another very profound life, but I'm not going to go into all that. But I died, and as soon as I died, I like was off. I was like off, and I had like I was like, the image I got is like me in an office, and I am talking to people, and like the chief executive, whatever, and I have people behind me, and I'm like, okay, I gotta do this, and they're like taking notes, and I'm just like, you know, I'm just gone. I'm like figuring out what my next lifetime's gonna be, what I need to do, what needs to be taken care of. And the person who's doing the past life regression was like, okay, hold on, wait, well, what happened? How'd you die? And I'm thinking to myself, who cares? Who cares how I died? That life was over, and I'm moving on to the next. I got stuff I need to do, right? And he's like, no, let's figure it out. So I got very irritated that he wanted to go back, because I didn't care how I died. I was like, all I knew was I had to get on with the next thing, because there's stuff to do, right? And turned out that I was very old for that era. It was in San Francisco. There were stagecoaches. It was like right at the beginning of the gold rush and all that stuff. And apparently I was just very old. I walked out on the street and I got trampled by a bunch of horses that were pulling a carriage. And he's like, such a tragic way to die, and blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I mean, I got to figure out what I'm doing in my next life, right? That's all I could think of. I was like so irritated. But what that told me, and the reason why I'm telling you that, is because death is just a doorway to another life. And there are a lot of us here who understand that we have very strong paths and purpose, and we know as we open up to what we're here to do, there's like, we become this force that is unstoppable, and we are committed. And I have to preface this, what I want to talk about with this, because like, I know maybe people don't want to hear it anymore, but these men in the special forces, their roots are the same as mine. And this drive is the same as mine. And as they awaken to this, they are a force beyond what even people can imagine. Because I know there's this idea, and there's this glorification of the special forces in movies and all that stuff, which is, I think, very far removed from reality, because you're just seeing the physical engagements of whatever some director perceived, and then whatever consultants they have on there kind of guide. But I don't think you can ever get to the root of the heart and the emotional impact of what is happening. And that is what drives people to go beyond what most people can think is possible, okay? And defy the laws of physics, or whatever laws that we have come to know that tell us what we can and can't do. Like, when people drive from their emotional body, from their heart, and then can access their consciousness through their heart, they will do things that are perceived as miraculous. And And these men, many of these men, I feel like come from that place, because I know I do. And so I'm going to go back to, I talked about the friend that I had many past lives with, and that he's kind of awoken some things in me, past life knowledge and wisdom that I had. And so I told the story about how he went through the secret space program and had all these lifetimes. He's living in all these different timelines. Well, before I even had that vision, I would say around December of 2020. Okay, it was after Thanksgiving. I started seeing us at war. So I had talked to him about like having visions of us warring together as a male. I was a male, he was a male, and it was very much like what was that movie with Russell Crowe? Gladiator. The movie Gladiator. The battlefield scenes, like those big, huge swords and like these bludgeoning weapons, right? I saw us fighting side by side in these ancient wars with these huge friggin' swords and these bludgeoning, I don't know what those tools are called, but those weapons are called, but just bludgeoning with rocks and just barbaric warring. And we were so tight and we fought side by side, and I saw him die, and I saw him dying, and I remember not wanting to leave his side because he was my brother, and then being told I had to pull back, like, we have to pull back, or we have to leave, we have to go somewhere else to fight. And then being worried about, well, what if the enemy comes back and takes his body and does something, defiles his body, right? So I remember that, fighting side by side with him, many wars. Like, I saw many lifetimes of this. And then I saw lifetimes where I was running the regiment, like huge fields of men getting ready to battle. And I remember pulling them back for whatever reason, and then him knowing that he was part of these regiments, left on the field to die. And then being like a general, like very far removed, calling, moving men, fighting wars, pulling back men, not knowing what's going on, other than winning, losing, losses, right? Losses of men, where we were vulnerable, where we were strong, and knowing where we needed to move men. And I see myself in that position, moving our pieces, like pieces on a chessboard, and him being left behind. Like, I had all these lifetimes where I was either fighting side by side with him, or where I was a regiment leader, where I was a general, where I was a leader, choosing to send my men to war, my people to war, and then him dying and me being left. Okay, and so I feel like he is literally being left behind, but also it's a metaphor for choices that I've made over lifetimes to go to war, and how to move through those actions, and what was best for the people, the greater good. Okay, always trying to fight for the people, and the sacrifices that were made. And when I had many of those visions coming in, it was a very, very difficult time. It was very, very, very difficult, because I left someone that needed to be, that shouldn't have been left. Okay, and if I'm honest, what I realized is I drew parallels in this lifetime, that he had to leave people in this lifetime, that he didn't want to leave. He was forced to withdraw or pull back or get out, whatever the circumstances, and he carries the weight of that experience of having to leave someone. And because I know there's this leave no man behind, but when we are dealing with, there are certain circumstances that are, let's just put it this way, there have been times in my lifetimes where I have said, you need to go, and then I will either take my own life or allow whoever to kill me so that you can get set free, so you can go free and get whatever you need to get done. Okay, that is about the greater good. Okay, but I know that even though that was a choice that's made, that this person will still carry that guilt or sadness, because I'd rather be the one being left behind. I don't want to be doing the leaving, because then I have to live with that trauma, right? And so the difficulty came in the knowing, making those connections. First of all, remembering those past lives, but then also knowing that this person has had to leave someone behind. What that lesson was for me was in compassion, having compassion for what this person is going through. Do not judge him in his decision. Do not judge him in his decisions, because these decisions are founded in a ton of trauma. These decisions that he makes now in this civil world, right? They're the foundation, what the root of that decision-making process has been heavily traumatized, and his decisions are based from those traumas. So don't judge, okay? And that's what that lesson was. So going through all those lifetimes and seeing the death and seeing that I was part of that in the decision-making process, and that I am partially responsible or wholly responsible for the deaths of many people, and then the people being left behind and potentially harmed and tortured, you know, and then people being left behind, people being left behind and potentially harmed and tortured, and how that affects people, and knowing people that have had to deal with this, and then having that in my energy field. It's very traumatic. That's why I said in the last video, like, when this information comes in, it's very debilitating. It's emotionally debilitating. I have to move through all those emotions again, and I have to move through them. I can't bury them. I have to move through them. I have to feel them, and then I figure out what's happening. Why am I going through this? Why am I feeling this? What is the lesson I take away from this, and how do I use this to empower me on my path and purpose? Okay, and I've done that. And what that lesson was about compassion for other people, compassion that have had for people who have had to do very difficult things that they would have rather not, but that they had the strength to make those decisions and fulfill their obligations, and follow through. Okay, and that was what that just came back in recently, whenever after I watched that, created that video last week, and then had all that information come in, and then this information came in about these wars and my role in these wars and these people that have been part of those lifetimes with me. Is like, no matter what, we always followed through. We always fulfilled our commitments. And in this endeavor, like, no matter what happens, I will follow this through. There's nothing that will stop me. I'm fully committed to this. This is not going to be a war like we've known in the past. This isn't even a war. This is a transition of the flow of energy. And this negative energy is resisting. And how this resistance manifests is sometimes through war, through abuse, through violations of divine law. That's what we're living through, right? But what I know and what I've learned is I never stop. I always drive forward, and I always fulfill my obligations to the divine, no matter what. And that is the push. When I was talking about the crone, it was like pushing the water, pushing the air, pushing the earth, moving fire. Like there's a force behind it being pushed, right? And that's what I do. I'll just keep pushing that energy, that force, to create balance. Whatever that energy is that needs to be pushed to resist this negative energy's desire to hold on, whatever that is, I just keep pushing. And that's why I just keep on bringing up these special forces guys, because they've pushed through so many things that you can't even fathom, because everything's on a need to know basis, right? They're trying to protect us from the horror of this world, right? And or protect us from the violence, or protect us from the truth, because we can't handle the truth, right? Which is the biggest crock ever. But these men have moved forward through things that we can't even fathom, and they're no stranger to difficulty, challenge, discord, resistance, in the most aggressive and violent way. And so based on everything they've been through, this probably is going to be the easiest part, right? They've already been through the hard part, but they've made it through, and that makes them powerful, powerful sources of energy in this endeavor. And I have this, the friend I talk about all the time. I even said to him, I go, everybody thinks you're such a badass. I go, everybody, oops, I guess I shouldn't have said that, right? Anyway, well, everybody thinks you're so, you know, they hold you up on this pedestal, which is funny to me, because I know the greatest power, the greatest source comes from his heart. Like, he is the best person. He has the biggest heart. He's one of the kindest people ever, but he's all protected. He protects himself because of all the trauma. I know I'm the same way, so I'm not judging. I used to have all this armor, and still sometimes that armor comes up, but it's mostly, you know, I'm torn it away, most of it, but he still has a ton of this armor up protecting him. Metaphorical armor, maybe even physical armor sometimes, but his power doesn't come from the armor. His power comes from what he carries in his heart. And if he taps into that truthfully, he is so powerful beyond whatever that armor, whatever protection he thinks that armor gives him. And that's what that negative polarity tried to prevent you from knowing and understanding. But we are beyond the cusp. So we were on the cusp of change for a very long time. I'd say the last couple years, but now we're moving to the downhill. We're like picking up momentum. This push into balance is picking up momentum. And so I think these energies that are traumatized, these people who are traumatized, like taking off that armor is going to become more easy as they see the world starting to soften. Okay, this cabal energy is starting to weaken. We can become more vulnerable when we don't see ourselves as being so threatened. Okay, and that will empower our journey, our path, and our purpose. So that vision, all the wars, was just about showing me the hard decisions that have had to be made in the past, but I was always able to make those hard decisions, always driving forward for the greater good, and always having what I needed to succeed. Okay, and that's one thing I also know. I know I always have what I need to fulfill my path and purpose, as long as I walk my path. Okay. And so just one more thing maybe 2. I pulled the wild, the archetype cards. But when I saw the village card, and maybe I'll do a picture-in-picture for this, because it's important. In the center of the card, this is a good place to end. I'm going to get the card, but I need to show you the card. Hold on. The village card was very, very profound. When I saw that card, I knew exactly what the message was. And so, the village, okay. And so there is this ring. When I saw that ring, all I could see was the void. I'm like, that's the void. And there's a hand pointing to the ring, but all I could see was that void. And I knew what this meant. This is end of times. This right here is everything coming down. So the first thing I talked to you about was all the illegitimate government, economic system, government, judicial system, all that stuff, all the infrastructure coming down. That's what these flames are right here. This color right here is this all coming down. This right here are the faithful. When I ask, what do you believe in? What do you put your faith in? This source energy right here, the void. Those of us who have committed to the void, to balance, to divine source energy, are protected in this space as this all comes down. Okay, that was so blatantly clear. I pulled this card, I was in tears. I was really upset, but you know, we all, the last 2 years I've asked, what do you put your faith in? What do you trust in? Do you trust in a mask? Do you trust in a shot? Or do you put your faith in something greater? And so we've all decided what we would put our faith in. And right now, we will be living through the consequences of our actions and our choices. I think it's not as definitive as that. I think there are much more variables. There's a lot of gray area. Meaning, I think there's a lot of really good people in the world that don't see the world the way I do, but still try to do the best they can every day. Try to be good people every day. And they fall short sometimes, but that doesn't mean that they're bad people. That just means they had a bad day and they fell short. Right? But I think at the root of who we are, if we're working from a place of do no harm, that's the best thing we can do. So this card was very telling, and that what it means, the village itself, is not represented, I don't think, in what I saw in this card. I think I saw this card, I saw the void, I saw those that were committed to the divine and their path and purpose being heavily fortified and protected in this thing, and sitting from a higher perspective, sitting from that higher perspective and watching the world come down from this safe place of faith and trust. That's what I saw on this card. Strong, very strong, unquestionable, unequivocally. That's what I saw. Like, I know it, I feel it, and I sit in the center of the circle, and I know people that are with me. Okay. Just give me one more second. So the Crone, she just comes in. She's funny. I like her. And she said, that's it. So that's it. Thank you.